Awesome. So we are live right now. Everyone, welcome to Tea Time. I'm going to go ahead and let whoever's ready go first. And I'm not sure if we should do a quick check to see if everyone can see the broadcast. I think so. And we're going to use pound Tea Time and IRC to handle questions. We'll get that a shot. And if you guys have any other suggestions, then we can entertain those as well. But for right now, I guess I'm going to talk for about a minute until the message is broadcasted to you, and someone can just ping me and let me know when they see this video on YouTube, so we can make sure everyone sees it. It says we're broadcasting, so we should be good. So we have about 4 or 5 presenters today. We have a full house for time, and I'd like to welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us. So I'm going to look in the Tea Time channel and see what's going on. I hear some laughing.
Yeah, that's my son. Hey, kids, I'm in a meeting. Hush.
Oh, that's cool. So has anyone seen the broadcast yet? Let me check it and see if we're broadcasting to the YouTube channel. Yeah, looks like we are. All right, with that said, thanks everyone, and I want to probably give some people time to join the Tea Time chat channel. Other than that, are any of you in the Hangout ready to present your work?
I am.
Okay, that's perfect, Katie. So we can go ahead and start with you then, in that case.
Okay. So can you... Alright, let me share my screen. Screen 1, screen 2, this one. No, I think. Yeah. Now, it might get all weird for a sec, because sometimes it likes to share the wrong screen. So, present. Okay, is it showing it? Come on. It does that sometimes. Okay, let me go full screen with this.
Just to let you know, Katie, I see Katie goes to AU. So I see your presentation. Yeah, I see that fine.
Okay, cool. Let me just... For some reason, it doesn't always like sharing stuff. So you're going to have to see like the horrible version. But it's pretty big now. Okay, cool. So I went to PyCon AU and nothing tried to kill me. PyCon AU is held in Brisbane. Brisbane is, even though it's winter in Australia during our summer, Brisbane is like the Florida of Australia. So the weather there was gorgeous. It was like our spring. But like the nice spring days, not the really crappy spring days. So the funny thing is, because Australians are apparently very thin-blooded, they were all walking around in like sweatshirts and hats and gloves, and I was in t-shirts and shorts, and they all stared at me like I was crazy. But the weather was absolutely gorgeous. Just something from the flight over. This is like super frickin' morbid. This is from SkyMall, and it's a wristwatch that counts down the remaining days and hours and minutes of your life, which is like horrible. Brisbane had this really cool feature. I got to walk around Brisbane a little bit. They had an artificial beach, which I'm assuming is there because the real beach is full of things that will try to kill you. So they made a fake beach. And it was actually really nice. Like, you could go and, had nice sand and like fountains, and it was all clear and clean. It was kind of neat to walk by. They also had these things called ibis, and I went to go walk up and take a picture of one, and I had 3 Australians like yank me back. They're like, no, the ibis are mean. So these were everywhere, and you were warned not to feed them because they would stone cold just start stealing all your things. They also had the really cool Ferris wheel, which I never got to go on. It's kind of hard to see, but all of these are enclosed. So if you go to Brisbane, they're like, oh, it's tourist trappy. And I'm like, I'm a tourist. I'm allowed to enjoy this. But all the things were enclosed. You could actually go on there and bring food. And they even had like a full service dinner that you could go on and they would just give you like more food when you hit the bottom again. So DjangoCon AU, PyCon AU was actually four conferences in one. They had something called a mini-conf. So the first day were 3 mini-confs. DjangoCon, they had a data, open rack kind of thing, so Rackspacey kind of thing, and they had a science track. So basically each room was its own conference. I gave a keynote there, and my keynote was about writing and how to learn to love writing through doing casual writing like fan fiction. And I think it's the first use of the words carnal buffet at any, PyCon ever. I also got wine, which we still haven't had. We still haven't enjoyed, but I managed to bring it back. They gave me keynote wine. Some of the talks that I highly recommend, Andrew Godwin did a talk about South, which is more the history of South, so it was more interesting in here are the things that I ran into that I did not expect to run into that were really hard, here's, why it's ending and why it's now in Django. It was a really entertaining, fun talk, and he was, got to share his exasperation. Keith McGee also gave a talk. He's one of the founders of Django, so he gives a lot of history of Django and deep down Django kind of talks. And I took a picture of this slide because he uses the word ravioli, which I'd never heard, and apparently it's for when the outside package looks really good, but you don't want to open it up and see what's inside. This gentleman here, his name is now escaping me, and I feel horrible because we talked for like hours. He recently got an award for helping people on the Django IRC channel. So if you go on there and ask for help, it's more than likely him that's helping you. And he was a great guy and had a great talk on how to get me to help you. Even if you don't use the Django channel that often, it's a great talk to point beginners to, and also just a really fun, entertaining talk. PyCon AU ran for the next 2 days, and this was one of the keynotes there. And he is an educator and a Python developer who decided that every child in Australia needs to learn Python, and he actually has gotten several of the states to create curricula that teaches children computer science through Python. This is Tennessee, another person I met there. If you like statistics, my background is actually in psychology, so I do a lot of statistics, and it was kind of a heartwarming talk for me because I'm like, yay, let's talk about ANOVAs and stuff, and he talked about that. He does a lot of stuff with weather, so also if you're into like weather and science and stats, this is a really neat talk to just go watch. Docker is it's kind of hard to describe Docker. It was one of those talks where you sit there and you go, wow, this is amazing, we should totally do this, and I walked away and I still don't know how to explain Docker. Basically, Docker has these packages that are read-only that they put out, and they put a very thin read-write layer on top of it, on top of like their operating systems and their bundles and packages and stuff, which makes it faster and it's easier to deploy and redeploy their applications. And I highly recommend going and watching it. Just a warning, they had some live demo issues because our Wi-Fi went down around this time. So when they start doing the live demo stuff, you can just skip ahead. But pretty much like the first half of the talk is well worth a watch. And they also had robots. This woman brought these really cute robots that she had hacked using Arduinos and Raspberry Pi. It was just really cute little robots that could see and do stuff. And she actually teaches women and children how to code using these robots. This is Elena, another person that I actually met a couple PyCons ago and really got to hang out with and bond. She does the Django podcast, and somebody asked her about the curse of the Django podcast because it seems like they run for a year and then die. Well, it's her turn to run it, and I didn't know it was up again. So this is just an FYI. She's running it, and you get to listen to her adorable Australian accent while talking about Django. There was a PyLadies breakfast. It was kind of hard to capture all of us because they put us in this long hallway, but there was a whole bunch of us eating at this wonderful little breakfasty place. Because, by the way, if there's anything Australians can do well, it's poach an egg. Every place I went to where they're like, yeah, we can poach eggs, poach them perfectly. And their coffee was great. The only weird thing about the coffee there, by the way, they don't do drip coffee. Everything is espresso. Like you walk into, just a little corner like pizza shop, and they don't have drip coffee, they have espresso. And that actually was disconcerting for me because I don't really drink espresso, and I have trouble with espresso drinks because I'm lactose intolerant. So it was funny at the conference when everybody else was like, oh my God, I can't believe that, they have drip coffee. And I'm like, oh, thank God, drip coffee. But if you see the beer bottle looking things, those aren't beer bottles. It's actually filtered coffee, like cold pressed coffee that they did themselves. So every morning my butt was trudging up there so I could get some, like cold filtered coffee because that was the closest I could get to filtered. This was a very important talk, how to upgrade a platform. This is relevant to our interests. I recommend everybody go watch it because they had to do something similar as to what we need to do with Metally, which is upgrade a bunch of stuff. And I felt that they both had some very good salient points that are well worth a watch. I also learned how to make sound. And he made some horrible sounds like during this. But it was a cool talk about how to make sound with Python. This one was another good one, Seeing with Python. This is actually what's weird about this conference. Being an avid conference goer, I often find myself just not going to talks. Then I'm like, I'll catch them later, whatever. I'd rather do a hallway track. All of the talks here were so fascinating and just wonderful that I was almost constantly in a room with a talk, watching talks. So this is another good one. We all use, like PyPy and DevPy and stuff like that. I recommend watching this talk. Not only is Richard Jones really entertaining, he helps run it, he helped found it, he knows a lot about it. And this one actually had a lot of good points about, hey, how to, mirror your own the right way. There was an event called Django Girls, and it was an event where a bunch of women got together and they worked on their own Django projects. I was one of the mentors. There was a bunch of mentors. Basically, you paired up a mentor with 2 or 3 women, and you worked on projects that were relevant to their interests. So you got Django set up, you created a few things, you got stuff, all installed and running, and and deployed if you could. I was the person running around solving random issues because I showed up a little bit later, but that was perfectly fine. It actually worked out really well. This was our view from the sprints, which was it was beautiful. It was like, I couldn't believe we could actually see the Ferris wheel. But you can see the Ferris wheel is pretty freaking big. After the conference was over, I went down to Sydney for a few days because it was just as cheap to fly me down to Sydney and out from there as it was just to fly me directly home. I stayed in a super posh hotel that I did not know was super posh. I actually apologized upon walking in the door because I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm American and I wear yoga pants to fly. And I mean, they had like high tea and like stuff like that. I mean, look at this bar. I felt totally out of place in this bar because it's like, oh, this place is like super fancy. And just down the street from my hotel, there was this thing. I was right next to the Sydney Opera House. I could not believe how close I was. I picked the hotel by accident because it was, not that expensive. But yes, this was literally like a 5-minute walk away from my hotel. And every time I walked past it or went past it, I had to like take a picture. Now you'll see here I'm on some kind of thing. I'm on a ferry. They have a bunch of ferries that run out of Sydney. They go to all these different places, and it's super cheap. People actually use it for just mass transit. Like they commute using these boats, which is just blew my mind. I spent a day in Manly Wharf. A bunch of people recommended it to me, and I'm really glad I went out there. It's a little beach. a little beach town. They had lots of rocks that I got to climb up on. I sent a video back to my kids of me on top of the rocks, and like I even went to the edge and showed how far down it was. And apparently my daughter's like, awesome, and my mother and my son were like, oh my god, I can't look. Nothing tried to eat me, but there were things there that looked like they were trying to eat me. Coming back, I of course had to take a picture of the Sydney Opera House again. And I did have kangaroo. I had kangaroo. I didn't get to eat the rest of the stuff. The coat of arms for Australia has 3 animals on it: a crocodile, a kangaroo, and an emu. And there's actually a meal you can get called the coat of arms that has all 3 of those things on it. I only got to eat kangaroo. Kangaroo, by the way, is very yummy if you like gamey things. I like gamey stuff, so it didn't bug me at all. But I know some people that would not enjoy it. And then I took another picture of the Sydney Opera House. This is actually Sydney from the Sydney Opera House, because the Opera House sits way out on this dock. So you get a great view of Sydney when you walk out there. I was fascinated by the trains in Sydney because they're double-decker. They're actually triple-decker. There's an up, a down, and then where I am is like this weird middle deck. You can also change the directions the seats go. It was super nice. And I brought back a whole bunch of Tim Tams. These were the Tim Tams I brought back. We are now down to the double coat and the dark chocolate. And I'm going to see if this works. I don't know if it'll play for everyone. Come on, little video. Oh, no. Okay, well, I'm going to get out of this because I'm going to see if I can show you this video. What are you shuddering about, Barbara? Kangaroo? Oh, I don't think it's going to play. Well, I will post this. No, stop playing. Stop. I don't want to. I will post this in the chat. And you can all watch whenever you want. And that was my trip to Australia.
Hooray!
That was amazing. Thank you. The pictures always helps, and it gives us insight. It's almost like we've been there ourselves, and I really appreciate that. And I'm going to pause for a minute and see if anyone has questions. Again, if you have any questions, post them to Pound Tea Time and IRC, and we'll go ahead and pick those up. And let me look at that right now and see what's going on.
Oh. I'm able to do this. How do you make you work? This is confusing.
Oh, what's that? You're trying to play with the Q&A tool, I guess?
No, I'm trying to play with the YouTube app.
Oh.
Okay. Well, everyone has the link, so.
We do have a few questions for you.
Okay.
And IRC. So the first one is, what's Katie showing us? Her Australia trip?
Yes, this was my Australia trip.
All right. So I'm not really like age. Nope, that's not a valid question. I have to read through the spam here. Okay, I think we're good.
Okay, good.
We'll go ahead and let Veech present from this point. And I'm going to go ahead and mute, and Veech, you take it from there.
All right, cool. Which screen am I sharing? So you should be seeing. Oh yeah, I can see it on the projector in here. Cool. Let's see if this works. All right. So there's a couple of problems with this presentation. The first one is this title is not accurate. I was going to talk about mocking 3 types of things that had given me trouble in the past. And then I went back and looked at them today, and 2 of them worked exactly the way you would expect with mock, so I'm not sure what I was doing wrong before. But I am going to talk about mocking files that you're using as context managers. So before I get into that, let's talk a little bit about the mock library and about unit testing. Mock library is a tool for replacing pieces of your code with known results. You can also use it to raise exceptions or to make assertions about whether or not something was called and what it was called with. So a common use case is going to be if you're writing a unit test that makes a network call, you don't want your unit test to need internet connectivity to be able to run. Or you might have unit tests that hit the database a lot and you want to mock that out so that you're not touching the disk. Mock is a tool for doing that. The mock library is a pretty big deal. In Python 3.3, it's now part of the standard library. So you don't even have to pip install mock. You can just import unittest.mock. So let's look at like a pretty typical example of using mock. So let's say you had a file in medley foo utils, and you were going to hit a URL, get some data back, and do some stuff with it. And you've also got some exception handling for the URL error possibility, or you might get an IO error when you read your result or your response. So you've got three potential branches: the kind of the happy path where no exceptions are raised, and then you've got two branches where an exception happens. So this is what testing something like that is going to look like. You've got one test where you're mocking out URL open and having it return a mock object that returns a string when you read it to do kind of the default case. Then you can also have URL open raise an exception, and you can test that chunk of code. And you can have you can mock out URL open to return an object, which when you call read on that object will raise an IO error, and that's going to let you test this last branch here. So you can start to see some of the power of mock. That this is going to let you cover all of your code with tests, and also, like I said, you're not actually hitting the network in your tests, which is always a good thing. One thing to note if you're new to mock is when you patch URL open, you're not going to patch URL lib2.url open. You patch it where it's used. In this case, in medley foo utils. So that's what this is about. So the case that I had some trouble with a week or two ago was dealing with files. I had a bit of code that was opening a file and then calling read lines. And there's a couple of problems with this code that we'll get to in a minute. But the way I tested it at this point was you can patch the open call. And like I said before, you're patching it where you're using it. And in this case, this was in make songs. This create equals true is because make songs doesn't have an open attribute. Open is just a built-in. And so if you don't have create equals true, mock is going to raise an exception because you're trying to patch something that make songs doesn't have. With create equals true, it'll go ahead and use our mock objects when that's called. So since open is a built-in, that's why that is there. So we create this little mock object that's based on the file object type, and then we're giving it a readlines method that returns a list with a string. And then we call our process method, and this runs with our dummy content. So the problem with the code up top as written is, for one thing, we're just calling open on this file, and so that means we need to remember to close it later. The other issue is with read lines, and read lines is going to read the entire file and dump it into a list in memory. So that's pretty inefficient. You can actually just open the file and then iterate over the file itself, and that'll give you back a line at a time, and that'll read the file more efficiently instead of just dumping the whole thing into memory. So once we rewrite that to use the context manager, for open so that we don't have to remember to close our file when we're done with it. That will just get closed when we leave this with block. And then we can just iterate over the file like I was saying. So what I did at first was I just said, okay, mock file is just going to be equal to this list, and this iteration should just work. The problem with that is that we're using the Open Context Manager here, so it ends up trying to call dunder exit on this list because context managers are going to call dunder enter and dunder exit. But this list obviously doesn't have this attribute, so that causes an issue. So what you can end up doing is all this nasty stuff where you have your mock object have a dunder enter method that gives you the thing you want, and then a dunder exit so that the code will actually run. It turns out there's actually a much easier way. Instead of messing with all that, you can use the magic mock class instead of mock. And that's just a subclass of mock, but it's got default implementations for magic methods, which are those methods that have 2 underscores before and after the name, like dunder enter and dunder exit. So this is pretty simple. You can just create your magic mock object, and you can say the enter method will give you this list with the lines that you're going to say are in that file. So like I said, I wasted some time figuring out how to make all this work. And then today, I was actually talking to someone about the mock library, and so I started looking at some of the docs. And it turns out that all that is actually completely unnecessary. Mock actually has a mock open helper method built in, so you can just do a similar patch, similar to what I was doing, but instead of creating your own magic mock, you can just use mock open, tell it what data you want it to give back, and you're done. So if you want to read up on that, here's a bit.ly URL, and that's all I got.
Alrighty, any questions on mock?
When we do have questions, we probably have to wait for, what?
I don't see any questions here, so we'll give it about a minute or so. Catch up.
You can just watch the IRC channel and then answer anything there. If you want to move on to the next one.
Yeah, I like that idea. Alright, so next we have... John, are you ready to present?
Sure. Should I go ahead and present?
All right, go ahead and do your thing, John. And thanks a lot, Jason, for that unit test talk on mock. It's very interesting to do that, and that helps us with eliminating external dependencies and makes our lives easier when we're writing unit tests. I didn't know about that, the helper, the mock open, so I'm going to have to look that up. It's awesome.
Hey guys, so I'm going to talk about Praxi. Am I muted, Rob, or am I good?
I can hear you.
Oh, you're good.
So I'm going to talk about Praxi. This is a quick project I just made real fast. So I'm on JP1, so we deal with wraps every now and then. I was having a hard time with testing wraps. For instance, the update frequency was like, well, is it updating in an hour? Is it not? That's a long time to wait. We deal with Arcadium. I don't know if you guys know that one, but that grabs our wrap. It essentially curls it and then hosts it on their site. So I was having extra issues with them, and I was like, oh man, okay, Arcadium's impossible. So you may say, well, there are other solutions already. You know, you could save the page from Chrome and host it with Apache, but it just felt wrong in my heart, I guess. So I wanted a little more interactivity. I wanted some live editing of the code. I didn't want to copy it again, and I just felt like I wanted more elegance. You know, I want it always available from the same URL. And there's other ways of doing this again, but I just felt led to make it this way for a few reasons that should become a little more clear later. So I went ahead and made a project called Praxi. I'm going to go to my GitHub now. So it's a local Vagrant-based forward proxy. Initially, I started with a pretty simple PHP file, which was it would totally just curl everything. But I found out that somebody already did it, so I shamelessly code jacked that guy. And you can see, if you go to the GitHub URL, you'll see it's a reference to another project. I forked it because it didn't also include a port. So I'll just, so what? So I added a port argument in case you wanted it for like 8,000, for example. If you wanted to test your local image. It's not working 100%, but you hit breakpoints, which is most of what I was interested in. I went with CentOS because, yes, there are rare updates, and usually I like to stay on the cutting edge with something like Fedora, but it's production ready, production happy, I say sometimes. I'd actually rather have less with the updates. I'm getting surprisingly bothered by that, so I'm going to move it over. And I'll show you real fast. So I went ahead and mapped Praxi to resolve to my VM IP. And you can say things like, if you want it in JSON, that's an option. You can replace native with JSON. And I also added a port argument, but I'm not going to use that right now because it's lame and we don't need that for the presentation. And here's the result. I'm going to refresh the page. Ta-da! So here it is, and it's actually from Praxi. And you can do a lot of the same stuff, and you'll see the same issues as we'd see with Arcadium, where you wouldn't be able to hit certain resources. So the core stuff, well, I guess I blocked all the ads, so we're not seeing all the same stuff, but same cores issues, same login issues, and now I could reproduce it a lot better locally with a Vagrant solution with options for port, native, and JSON, which I didn't see super easily anywhere else. The other VMs that did the similar thing just didn't work for me, so I made my own. So that's it. Any questions? I guess I can look for myself.
Yeah, and you know what? I was almost thinking about just taking questions at the end, or maybe you guys could post questions while they're talking. So Jennifer had one where she was wondering what a wrap was. Derek kind of addressed it, but maybe you can give your explanation of a wrap, John.
Yeah, so a wrap, I mean, honestly, I'm not like 100% clear either, but in the way that we're using it with Arcadium, we would put some kind of filler crap content, I guess, like throwaway content, and we would mark a div so that Arcadium could retrieve that content, and we'd have like an ID, and it would say, hey, Arcadium div. So Arcadium would grab that content, replace that whole div with their content, so that they could then turn around and host it on their sites. So I guess a wrap, it's a pretty crappy explanation of a wrap itself, but you know, I'm just going to have to defer to anybody else who has better knowledge on that. It's kind of like, I guess, Flatpage in that you can override certain content elements, but I don't know how to distinguish between a wrap and a flat page.
Yeah, and I'll just add to it, like, so wrap in like newspaper terms, when we hear the word wrap, or when a newspaper producer hears that, they're thinking about all of the elements around the content. So that would include the navigation, the right rail, and the footer. And the content would be, like, for story, would just be the story inside that. And to answer your question about a flat page does have a wrap, and if you go to ajc.com, you navigate around, you'll notice that certain page elements are the same, and those elements are shared from page to page. So if you go to like the home page or to a particular story, you'll notice these common navigation elements and right rail and footer. So that's what we call a wrap. It's kind of like a concept that where these elements wrap around the content, if you will. And a flat page is just a content type in Medley that allows producers to put whatever they want inside of it. It's kind of like free form. They don't want to deal with designs. They don't want to have to deal with the templates that we have, because most pages are driven, well, all pages are driven by templates. So if they say, hey, I want my own look and feel, if I want my own type of design, my own HTML in this page, I have a flat page where I can have a free form place to put all of this content and save it, and it'll be a page that I can go to, and I can map a URL to it. I guess we can. Do you see any more questions in there, John?
No,
Okay.
we're good.
All right. Well, thanks for that. Next on the list, we have our last speaker for today. Then we can all go home. Michael Lamb.
Hey everybody, can I be heard okay? I know my air conditioner is running, so there might be some static in the background.
I hear you fine.
Cool. Okay, so I've just got things that I wanted to bring to everybody's attention. Number one, the CMG Tech blog is we're about to be able to throw the switch and turn it on. So I have a draft email that's going to go out pretty soon that's going to be a call for content. If you've got an article, or if you brought a presentation to the Tea Time that you think could be fleshed out and made longer and more detailed, that sort of thing is a great sort of piece of content to host on the new tech blog. Hang on, I'm just going to bring it up. So you'll hear about that in the next coming week or so. We were trying to launch next Friday, that's August 29th, but that might at this point that might not be enough time to get the first few articles put together. So instead, we'll probably launch the Friday 2 weeks from then. So we're trying to stick to a schedule that's alternating with Tea Time, in the hopes that we can bring our article drafts to Tea Time and discuss them, maybe, if there's time and if we want to do that. And one item that we know about is that I was pushing hard to get the tech blog articles that we're going to be hosting licensable as Creative Commons, so that we can rehost them and improve them and share them, that sort of thing. And so I've got tentative approval for all articles on the tech blog to be Creative Commons. So you'll hear more about that in the week, but definitely if you've got an idea for an article in mind, now would be a great time to start working on it. And if you finish it, or you want to send a draft around, you can shoot it right to me and follow up with me. I'm Datagrok on IRC, by the way. What else? Let me share my screen just a moment. You've probably recently seen the PSA that talks about the dupe checker and the base checker. If you're not familiar with that, sometimes you'll go through a harrowing rebase and construct your code and finally get it ready to go, and then you bring it to QA and the build breaks because it's complaining about you have duplicate commit messages. And so this tool that we put into place can be kind of annoying, but it does catch real issues and real problems, and it keeps us from making some mistakes. So we want to work on improving that. We want to work on making that so that it doesn't interrupt your flow as a developer so much, so that it's more of a helper than something that gets in the way like a roadblock. So there's new documentation up for that Marcus worked on. There's documentation up on the intranet about how you can go about introducing duplicate commits, and therefore how you can avoid them. So that's something that you might want to go look at. Just go to the PSA's page and click around for the PSA about the dupe checker. Also, we are testing a new Git workflow. This is going to be a workflow where we turn off the ability to do force push, and then we make it under this workflow. Push -- force will be never needed. It'll use merges instead of rebases, and I tried to create a sort of exhaustive document that describes all the different commands that you'll need to use, which hopefully under normal circumstances should be only 4 commands: commit, push, pull -- rebase, and pull origin parent. just using those 4 commands, you should be able to do all the things with Git that you need to do. It's safe to use if you're collaborating with another developer on one branch, and it should avoid a lot of the problems that we've had now. And I've also tried to do like little workflow flowchart diagrams. So I'm really interested to see or hear any feedback about these documents. Like, are they? I wish there were more pictures, and I'll try to get more pictures in there. But if they're too dense, what your first impressions are, like, oh, this is too much to read all at once, that sort of thing. And any feedback that you have at all, I want to make this a useful resource, not something that gets handed down for you to have to deal with. I had something else. TechBlog talked about that. Workflow talked about that. I think that's it. Okay, that's all I have, Rob.
All right, thank you, Michael. So if you have anything you want to post to the tech blog, get with Michael. We're excited about it because we can also post tea time presentations we would like to hear, as well as technical information there. So it's good to have another resource we can go to for things like that. And if you have any questions, post them in Pound Tea Time. We were just thinking, hey, why don't we just answer the questions in there as they come up, because everybody's in that channel, so we can collaborate in there as well. I don't have to wait a minute and then repost it. So we're still working out the question technology, so let me know if you have any ideas for that. But really enjoy everyone coming here, and I want everyone to have a good weekend. So take care. And you're still welcome to hang around the Tea Time chat channel if you want to discuss anything further. But thanks to all the presenters and to everyone tuning in. Have a good weekend.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.